Welcome to Garden Delights. I'm Susan Howington, Family Consumer Science Agent with the Henry County Cooperative Extension, partnership with the University of Georgia Cooperative Extension. Today we're going to talk about figs. We're going to hear from Frank Hancock, our Agriculture and Natural Resource Agent. He's going to talk about figs too and tell you exactly what you need to know. So we'll see you back in just a little bit on Garden Delights. Welcome back to Garden Delights. Today we're going to be talking about figs, and I will tell you it's one of my favorite fruits. And you know, it only comes around at one time in the year when it's ready, and you better be ready to pick it when it's ready. And we are lucky we have a fig tree close to our work, so Frank and I have been really watching that fig tree to when it's going to get ripe, and we couldn't help ourselves. We already have been up there and eating figs off the fig tree, and luckily he picked some for the show for me. And I will tell you, I absolutely love figs. And there's so many people that have the trees that have never tasted them, but they are so good for you. They are high in vitamin K, B6, and they are high in fiber. The good thing is they're low in cholesterol, sodium, and saturated fat. So all I can say is this little jewel right here is something you need to try if you haven't tried before. As far as the selection part goes, you know, you can buy them at the grocery store. Like I always say, buy them in season because that's when you can get the best deal. And right now in the grocery stores, you'll see buy one, get one free or a really low price. So if you're going to the grocery store, I will tell you to look at them really, really good because figs, they can ooze out. And if they're oozing out the base of them, that tells you they're too ripe. They may be even going to spoil. You also want to look too at the green part. If you can make sure it's green, if you can see if it'll wiggle a little bit in the little container they're in, that's even better. And what I always like to do is flip the container upside down. Look at the bottom part because that tells a story about those figs. If they really look fresh, you're not going to see any milky liquid coming out of the figs. And also you're looking for a plump fig, and that's what it's all about. Look for a plump one, and different figs are going to look different as far as the color. Now these we consider are called wild turkey, and to me it's the ones you see around locally right here, and they don't get really big, they get pretty big, but I like them because you can cook with them, you can make preserves with them, and they just are just great. But selection part, just look at that part because they'll also produce a milky look that'll come out the stem, and that tells you too that there's something wrong with that fig. So look for plump ones, and that's your key as far as looking at them. Now when you're storing figs, they don't store very long, so they are best if you can pick them, leave them out for 1 to 2 days, and if you don't know what you're going to do with those figs in 1 to 2 days, put them in your refrigerator because that's going to prolong them a little bit longer, and that's what you want to do. So put them in your refrigerator. Now let's say after 2 days you don't know what you want to do. I will tell you, figs freeze very, very well. So freeze them. You don't have to wash them, just freeze them. You can freeze them on a cookie sheet and then put them in the freezer for a little bit. Freeze them just a little bit, put them in your Ziploc bag, bring them back out later. You can even do this if you really want to make fig preserves. You could even prolong them a little bit longer in your freezer and then bring them back out and make those fig preserves later if you have a lot of figs coming in at one time. So as you can see, a fig is a wonderful fruit that you need to put in your diet. I will tell you a half a cup of figs, the calcium in a fig is a half a cup equals a half a cup of a calcium in milk. So if you're not a milk drinker, here's your calcium for the day. So when we come back, we're going to hear from Frank Hancock. He's going to talk about figs, how to care for those trees, and hopefully he's going to have me enough to be picked what I can use for this recipe. So we'll see you back in just a little bit on Garden Delights.
Okay, today we're going to talk a little bit about figs. There's several things you need to know about figs. I've been out here picking some figs this morning and got a pretty good little bucket full of figs here. Susan's going to fix something with figs here in a little while. I think this particular fig bush that we're standing in front of is a brown turkey. Brown turkeys have got a little bit of a red pulp and they got a red eye on the fig, whereas Celeste would be more green on the end. That's one thing that's hard to figure out. I get people call me up, want to know what variety figs they got, and we can come close, but there are so many different varieties of figs. But one thing that you need to understand up front about figs is they are a Mediterranean plant. They are a subtropical plant, and they are subject to freeze. So not just any fig will grow here. So we are looking at brown turkey and Celeste being our two main ones. There's several others. UGA's got a brochure that tells you some other names, but if you want to be successful, I suggest that you stick with the brown turkey or the Celeste. Celeste's a little bit smaller than the brown turkey, but those are adapted to our climate. If you buy a fig here at one of the nurseries, they're going to be the kind of figs that grow in this area. If you get on the internet and try to figure out what kind of fig you want to buy, and you find yourself communicating with somebody from some other country that might be down around the Mediterranean, you're going to really get messed up. Or if you happen to be talking to somebody about some California figs, you're going to be messed up even worse, because those figs that they grow require a little wasp that goes into the fig, it goes into the eye. Those figs have got more open eyes than this, and they go in, and as they go in, it breaks their wings off, so they're trapped in there for the duration, and they pollinate those figs. That little wasp that pollinates those figs don't live in Georgia. So you can buy all the California figs and all of the European figs you want to, but I suggest if that's what you're going to do, that you get you a good lounge chair, let them grow up big like this, and you set your chair in the shade so that you have a nice shady place to sit, because you're not going to be having any figs. So stick with the varieties that grow here. You can get figs like a pH of 5.5 to 6.5, so if you're shooting in the range of 6, you'll be good for figs. They grow in a lot of different kinds of soils. Biggest problem with them, of course, is when it gets down to 10 degrees, some damage is going to be done. Sometimes they'll die all the way back to the ground when a hard freeze hits them. I know my daddy's got one on his place that's been there for 60 years. And I can remember 4 or 5 times over the years where it's frozen and died back to the ground. It always comes back. It's been there ever since I can remember. But it does go away sometimes when it gets cold. Figs require a little bit of fertilization. When you first plant them, you want to spread a little bit of fertilizer around them, maybe 3 times a year, once in the early spring, once in May, once in June, to get it growing and into production. Once they get large, like this one is right here, then you're going to probably put 5 pounds of 10-10-10 around this fig, and that's all it needs for the year. So you don't have to be fertilizing it too much once it gets established. If you fertilize them too much, you get a lot of top growth. You want your new growth to be in the 8-inch range each year. You'd like for it to grow about 8 inches. If you fertilize it more than that, you get more than that much growth on it. Several things can happen, but one thing that can happen is it might drop its figs. It's putting all its energy into growing more leaves and more stem, and anything that stresses the plant. So if it's a drought, these figs can drop their fruit. If it's too much fertilizer, they can drop their fruit. Just anything that stresses the plant. So it's not unusual. You also get what's called a Berber fig that grows off of last year's wood. Your main crop of figs grows off of this year's growth, and so it's going to produce. So if you prune it back and then you get some growth in the spring, it'll still produce figs if you don't prune it back too far. So these Berber figs, they'll start getting on there as soon as the weather gets warm. So if you have a warm winter and you come through some of these buds that didn't produce last year, they may start producing way back in January, and it's more than likely they're going to get hit by a freeze and they're going to fall off. So early in the year, if you're losing a few figs that otherwise shouldn't have even been there, then don't worry about it. It's some of those. And then like last year, we had a warm winter, so we come into this year, there's a few Berber figs on here that are growing and getting ripe, so they can be grown, but don't count on it because most of them are going to hit the ground before you get there. So selecting the right variety, fertilizing them properly, planting them properly. You need to dig a big hole 3 times as big as the root ball on what you're trying to plant. You can take cuttings off of the fig and they root very easily, and you can grow your own that way. My suggestion is just go to the nursery and get some so that you know what it is that you're getting and they're ready to start in your garden. Select some that's got a good root system on it. We don't want to get some that don't have good roots because then it's an uphill battle trying to get them established. So nice big hole, plenty of amendments. I don't like putting fertilizer in the hole when you plant them, so put the fertilizer on top, let the rain dissolve it, take it down, let the roots pick it up versus having it in the hole where it starts to burn the roots before it dissolves, and then you've got a plant that's struggling from the get-go. So just those kind of things that you need to think about when you're growing figs. Figs can get diseases. They'll get, there's several different diseases, but pretty much you don't do much to figs. They get started growing, they start producing figs. And in the case of this one behind us right here, nothing's been done to it. It produces a lot of figs, but this winter, we'll probably come back out here this winter and film this one more time, and we'll show you how to cut this fig back to get it where we can manage it, because we can't pick these figs without a step ladder. And in fact, our 6-foot step ladder is not tall enough to get some of them that you see growing up there in the top. So figs are a flower. It's a kind of an inside-out sort of flower, and they are self-pollinated as long as you're sticking with the brown turkey and the celeste and those that grow in the southeast. North Georgia has more problems because they got more freezing weather, but so it's self-fertile. You don't, and you don't have the wasp that pollinates these California varieties because he just don't live here. He can't survive in our climate. So that's kind of what's going on with figs. And you can just come out in the garden and get you a fig that's nice and sweet. And we're gonna go up in the kitchen and see what Susan is fixing for us.
Welcome back to Garden Delights. We're talking about figs, and we're going to be roasting these figs with a little honey, a little butter. I say margarine, and it's light. And we're also going to use a little bit of vanilla, and it is going to be so tasty. And I have to say that Frank loves ice cream. And when I was sharing this recipe with him, he saw the ice cream. I said, let me change it a little bit. I think I'll do some frozen yogurt. So he's going to like it either way when he sees what we have. So what you'll need for the recipe, you're going to take about 12 to 15 of these figs, and make sure you have washed them, because you do want to have them washed. And so for the recipe, all you need to do is take the stem part off. And so you're going to do that, and you're going to cut them in halves. So that's what I'm going to do right now. And what I'm going to start is I have about 3 tablespoons of light margarine. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this on, because I want it to go ahead and heat it up to make sure I have it where the butter is going to start melting, because once the butter has melted a little bit, I'm going to start incorporating the honey into the butter. If I can get it to go, we'll cut it back off and try it one more time. Okay, let's see. There we go. All right. So I'm just going to put my stems over here. And this is real simple. And what we're going to do is take these figs and we're just going to roast them in the skillet for about 5 minutes. And what we're trying to do is just get them brown. So that's all I'm going to do. And the figs are really nicely plump. They are, you can tell they're nice. And just to show you what a fig looks like on the inside, it's wonderful seeded in there, and it's really tasty. I know I grew up on fig Newtons, and I will tell you, I've always loved fig Newtons, so you know that's what fig Newtons are made out of, figs. So I'm just going to make sure I get all the ends off, cut them in halves, and when you're going to serve it, you could serve it over a low-fat yogurt. We are going to use a low-fat frozen yogurt today, and I will tell you that you could just eat it just like it is. You don't have to eat over anything if you really want to. So it's up to you. And they make a great snack. And I will tell you this, you can dry figs and they dry very well. And even when they're dried, you're going to get a lot of calcium from them also. So if you're looking for a way to get more calcium in your diet, think about them either cooking them like this or either taking them and drying them. And I will tell you, there's a lot of recipes out there that you can use figs in, and they're just a wonderful fruit to use. And like I say, look in that grocery store now, because this is your chance to pick them out, freeze them. If you don't want to eat them, I think I've got all these in halves except for one right here that's trying to hide from me. Okay, so my butter is melting, and I'm going to up the temperature just a little bit, because I want it melted first before I ever add the honey to it. So we'll do that. And what we're going to do is end up taking the halves of the figs and laying them on top. And we're going to cook it for about 5 minutes. So I want to make sure my honey, the honey mixes in well with the butter. So I'm going to get it to melt just a little bit more. And if you didn't want to use butter, you know, or margarine, you could just leave this part out if you wanted to, if you're really watching your diet, and just use the honey and the vanilla if you wanted to. So this is about melted. So what I'm going to do is start putting in the honey, and I'm going to get it, it'll probably just be a little bubble to it, and that's what I want, because once I add the figs, and I'm not going to add the vanilla yet. I'm going to just try to mix in the honey and the margarine. And it smells so good. If you like honey, the honey just takes over. It smells really, really good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to lay the figs into the skillet, and I'm going to put them just like this, with the face of the figs where I cut, where the seeds are, down. My goal is, while it is cooking, to also take some of the juice and kind of push it around the figs to where it's getting around the other part of it. So you're going to do this for about 5 minutes. I'm going to put this down and see if I can add more at a time. Oh, and it smells really good. I can smell the, and also if you want to, you can just kind of shake it around while you're getting them in there. And this is about 15 figs that I'm using. The recipe is going to tell you 12 to 15. And if you want to use more, depending on your skillet size, you can double the recipe if you want to. Also, once you make this recipe, it stores very well in the refrigerator. So if you wanted to get up the next morning and eat it on some cold yogurt, you could do that, or you could heat it up just a little bit more if you wanted to. So I almost have them all in there. And it smells really, really good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of add the vanilla. I'm just going to kind of sprinkle it around, and I'm going to kind of stir it. And you can see when the vanilla goes to it, it bubbles up even more. And I'm just going to kind of move it around. And this is going to take about 5 minutes. And what I want is the figs to become kind of roasted on one side. So I'm not going to flip the figs. I'm going to leave them on one side. And I'm just going to shake my pan just a little bit to make sure it's going around in it a little bit, getting it all in there. And so I'm going to let this cook for about 5 minutes. And we come back Frank and I will be tasting this on some frozen yogurt. So we'll see you back in just a little bit on Garden Delights. Welcome back to Garden Delights. Frank, thanks for the figs.
I'm ready. We worked hard to get those figs out of that tree.
I heard all about you climbing around in that tree.
Yeah, we got them though.
I know you're going to like this, especially this part of it, right?
This part of it I'm already ready for.
I already knew that. And this is roasted figs with a little bit of honey, a little bit of butter, margarine, and a little bit of vanilla. So I'm just going to spoon it over there.
Stuff.
And notice it makes a nice syrup to go over your cream, your frozen yogurt.
I also noticed it was really hot when I got here.
I know it. I know. I just got through cooking it, so don't burn your mouth. So you can eat the cold stuff first. I'm sure the figs will be cooled off by the time you start eating on it. It smells good. I'm anxious to get some of this syrup first.
Just right.
It's really good.
It is good.
The honey. I'm supposed to eat my fig now. It's warm, and I promise it won't burn your mouth.
I got to confess, though, you know, when I was up there getting these figs, there was a maintenance guy came by in his truck, and I got him to get his ladder out. And he got his ladder out, and he climbed up the ladder. I didn't. He picked the figs.
I would have known that. Well, I'm glad you didn't get up there and hurt yourself, but I'm glad he did so we could have figs for the show.
I thought it was a pretty good deal myself.
I think it's a very good deal. This is really good.
I've been studying figs, and there's a serious debate on the internet. The California figs, some varieties, they have a little insect that pollinates them. And that insect doesn't live up here. But there's a big debate with the vegans, because when that insect goes in, he can't get back out. So is it really vegan food, or is it got an insect inside of it? So,
well, let me tell you, I don't want to find out. I know.
Well, see, the good news is, though, the figs that grow here don't need that little insect.
That's right.
And it's a good thing, too, because he doesn't live here
That's
anyway.
a good thing. But I will tell you, I know you're out picking these, and I was talking about on the show that they'll start leaking that juice coming out, and what happens, all those wonderful bees and wasps like to get around the figs. So they're not the easiest to pick, are they, when they have the insects flying around?
No, that's why I got that guy to go up on the ladder for me.
That makes good sense, really good sense. Check out the website for the recipe. I know you're going to really like it. And Frank and I will see you next time on Garden Delights.
You know, are you sure that Adam and Eve were eating an apple? I'm wondering